want to tell you about the first time that I became aware that Gish was aware of me. That is, I was reading this interview, but this was before we actually met in person. I was reading this interview, and in this interview, she says, we need to kill Maxine Kingston. So Gish, I'm going to ask you, was that your individualistic American self trying to get rid of the dependency?
I really should explain.
Explain yourself.
You know, I was, of course, you know, as a young writer, I was asked every single day, you know, kind of about Maxine, and you know, and you know, and I did say, yeah, many of you know who Harold Bloom is, and that he wrote this book, Anxiety and Influence, and so I did say in an early interview that that you know that I had some anxiety of influence, and that like all young writers, I had to kill my predecessors. And the result really was, the first time I met Maxine, she said, I read you wanted to kill me.
Okay, so we set out to write the great American novel. And the great American novel is written by an individual, a strongly individual man. And so how did you, the interdependent woman, how can you come to the novel through all of that interdependence and femininity? How do you arrive at the great American novel?
I don't pretend that I have written the great American novel.
You have. A great American novel, or several.
Well, you know, it's the same way you do, I'm sure. You know, I mean, I do notice that that I need what I think seems to be an unusual amount of solitude in order to work. In other words, I know all these people who can work in their kitchens, they can work in cafes, and I feel like more power to them, you know? I mean, I have to be far, far, far away from anybody. And you know, I have to be locked away in a cabin, with snow. I mean, it's to be very quiet. I need to be very, very quiet in order to hear this voice in me, which is strictly my own voice. I think Gina Phillips once said something. She said, you know, it's like that writing is like listening to a very, very quiet voice. And I do think that we all have a very, very, very quiet voice in us that we're not always so aware of. But I do think that some of us need to be especially quiet in order to hear that very, very quiet voice. But I can turn around this and I can ask you, Maxine, I mean, where did you find it in yourself to write that first book one morning? You're there, you are, you're going to sit down and write this novel, and you didn't intend to write it as a novel. I mean, where did you even get that idea? Where did you get the nerve to be doing this thing, which you must have known was very counter to anything that you had been brought up to do?
You know that idea that we do have interdependent selves, then it becomes very strange, doesn't it? That you have to find that room all by yourself and get away from these people, you know, getting away from them in order to be able to write. That's very hard for me. I feel guilty. There's a lot of times when I locked our son away, and I gave him a bag of marshmallows and just locked him up, and he had to figure out how to open it. But you know, I feel very guilty. I began The Woman Warrior by going to Lanai, this very uninhabited, it does have some people, but an island in Hawaii, and at this hotel that had like 10 people, and there's nothing to do. The bowling alley's broken, the projector ball was broken in the movie theater, and so there's nothing to do. So I just turned my table and desk toward the wall, away from the beautiful scenery, and just made notes for the woman warrior. I would like to talk about Grace Paley. You know, she is your mentor, and she is my mentor also. And she has influenced me in politically. She influences me in the form and shape of the story. I can see that she can tell an entire life in one paragraph size, or she could do a whole short story, or she could do a poem. That experiment with form. And I also I want her ear, that ability to hear voices, human voices, the individual voices, as well as the accents and dialects. And so I know she's your mentor too. And I'd like to hear how she influences you. Especially the Jewish part.
Well, it's true though, you know, I was Jewish before I met Grace Paley. You know, I grew up in Scarsdale, New York, and so, you know, it's the New York Jewish part was there way, way, way before I met Grace. But I think that, you know, there are many ways in which Grace has influenced me, as have you, of course. But I think that one of the things that's very striking, I think, about people like you and me who are hybrids, is that we do feel guilty about doing this thing, which kind of in the pure Western model is only about art, and it is not about anything but your self-expression. So it is quite self-centered. And I do think that's one of the ways that we compensate for the fact that our work is so individualistic is by taking an interest in society. You know, and I do think that Grace was a great example to me of somebody who could make great art, who was also involved, who was also engaged. And of course, you yourself, also a tremendous example for me in that way. And of course, that was not the model before you guys. In fact, I remember very, very clearly that I was once on, I think, the Lid Jill Mueller NewsHour or something. I was doing something about the election. And Cynthia Ozick said to me, I love Cynthia, but Cynthia Ozick, she said to me, she said, "You're being a citizen." And you know, that was a bad thing, you know, it was a bad thing, it was a bad thing. I mean, she didn't mean it like you're a bad person, you know, she really was just trying to say, Gish, think about where your priorities are, you know? And I think that she was an older model. And I think that you and Grace were the generation that taught people like me that actually maybe, you know, maybe making kind of real art and being engaged were not actually necessarily in conflict. I will say that I don't think that that's clear to everybody today at all. I think it's still quite a controversial thing. And also I think that we deal with the fact that we have this interdependent side, with also in our work, you know, asking ourselves, I ask myself, you know, why would somebody want to read this? You know, I mean, I feel that the reader's time is a kind of gift. I don't assume the whole world is there waiting to hear what I have to say. You know, and I don't publish a book until I feel that I actually took the time to figure out that I really did have something to say, and really, it was something like it was not just about me. It was about me, but it was about more than me. And if I don't have that feeling, I don't publish it. But I think that that's not a question I notice that all writers ask themselves. They really don't ask themselves, is it about more than me? You know, frequently, you know, it's about me. What else? Right? But I've learned that from you guys, though. You You know, I mean, you were the great inspirations.
Well, speaking of guilt, it was a real problem for me to write publicly. And so here are all the people that are my interdependents. The family, the whole amazing family with their great adventure stories, which I wanted to write. But how dare I reveal our family secrets? How can I write about people and the way I feel about them? And how can I write immigration secrets? And there is something in me that I wanted to write the truth. I even want to use their real names, and I just could not feel right about changing their names, and I could not tell a story as if it were fiction. And so in a way, I see myself very different from you in that I see myself as more of a non-fiction writer, and I can't seem to break into I don't know what it is, artifice or fiction, but I see you with truly with a novelist's mind. You are making up characters that, I don't think that they're real people. I think that you make them up. And how do you do that?
Great secret. No, I do think that, actually, I think that I do write fiction in part because I would not dare, tell family secrets. I don't write about people I know, actually. I mean, with a few exceptions. Every now and then, someone might sneak in there. But in a general kind of way, and it is all imagined. How we find these characters, I think every writer, every fiction writer has a different way. I myself often I locate a feeling in myself, so I'm looking for a nerve. So an example of this is when I wrote my book, Mona in the Promised Land. And what I do is I take lots of notes, I put them on index cards, I look at them many months later. My feeling is if it's a good idea, many months later it'll still be a good idea. If, many months later you've forgotten about it, it's not such a good idea. And I look at my reaction to my own ideas. And in the case of Mona in the Promised Land, I came across an index card that said, Mona turns Jewish. And I thought, oi! I can't write that. And then I thought, well, why am I laughing? Why do I feel I can't write that? In a general kind of way, I'm looking for, I feel that we all have nerves that we have developed as a result of our contact in the world. And so I'm always looking for those nerves. I often think about what Gertrude Stein once said. She said the artist works by locating the world in himself. I wish she had said herself, but she did say himself. And I think that's actually right. I think that we have internalized the world, and I think that we have developed nerves as a result, that are part of that picture. And I think that if you write on one of those nerves, the book will write itself. The characters will arise. They have a lot of life. They're not real people, but the nerves are real. The nerves are real, and the world is real. And so it's a very wonderful thing, actually, because you don't have to worry. Does this say something about the world? If you were on that nerve, it will. It will say something about the world, kind of by itself, without you don't have to think about it. It simply arises. And so that's how I do it. And you can too. I think, we all have our different ways. I think now I'm kind of trying to feel my way into nonfiction and see if I can do. This my Maxine lecture. My first Yeah, my first little foray into nonfiction, and it was much more of an adventure than I thought it would be. But so you know, maybe I will eventually learn to do what you do. But in the meantime, you know, you're right. I am very squarely over on the fiction shore.